If you've been following our lessons so far, you'll have learned all about the pawns and all about the rooks. Today we're going to look at another piece. This piece is the bishop. B-I-S-H-O-P, the bishop. Let's find out how he moves, show you a little mini game, and then it's up to you to do some practice. The bishop, as we can see, is in the center of the board. He's on the square E4. You may remember our coordinates from the previous lessons. Just makes it easy to talk about where things are on the chessboard. The bishop's on E4. Bishops move on diagonals as far as they want to move, which means you could go along that line if you wanted to. Bishop could go along this line and even on the backwards diagonals. These are all the places the bishop could move to. Very nice, but there are some limitations to the bishop. For instance, he can't move forwards, he can't move backwards, and he can't move sideways. The rook could do those things, as we saw in lesson number 2, but the bishop has to stick to the diagonal lines. There's one other thing he can't do, which isn't entirely obvious until you start to think about it. If he starts on a white square, as he has done in this position, he can never ever change over to the black squares. He's stuck on white forever. It's impossible to change the colour of the squares if you move only on diagonals. Maybe you could challenge yourself here and maybe try and work out how many white squares this bishop could move to if he keeps moving around the board as long as he wants. How many different squares could he land on, and how many different squares would he never be allowed to go onto? That's something for you to think about at home. We start the game of chess with 4 bishops, 2 for white and 2 for black. The white ones are on F1 and C1, and for black there are bishops on F8 and C8. It's always useful to see how quickly our chessboard is building up as we go through the pieces. For example, when we reintroduce the pawns to the position, the board suddenly starts to look a little bit more crowded. And then once we get the rooks on from lesson 2, we can see there are only 4 gaps left in each position, and we're going to fill those gaps in over the next 3 lessons. If we were to play a mini game with bishop against bishop, it would not be much fun. In this position, you can probably see very quickly the problem. The white bishop can go on the white squares forever, and the black bishop will go on the black squares forever. But they could never meet. The white one could never take the black one, and the black one could never take the white one. The game would go on for a very long time, but it would not be a very rewarding experience. Even if we had the bishops on the same colour, this will not work so well either, because you have to make a big mistake to lose this game. You have to blunder. The blunder is a very bad move in chess. For example, if white were to move his bishop to H3, unfortunately for him, the black bishop would swoop down and capture him. So the game would rely on a big mistake, and we want a little bit more skill than that. So in our mini game, we find 1 bishop taking on an army of pawns. You may remember when we had the game with the rook, there were 5 pawns against the rook. The bishop's not quite as strong as the rook, because he can only go on half of the chessboard on his white squares in this position. He's trapped on the white squares. He can never go to the black squares. So in reality, he's worth 3 points or 3 pawns, and that's reflected on the pieces on the board there. This mini game, you may remember actually the first one was called Capture the Flag with just the pawns involved. Then we had the rampaging rook, and this one is known as Bish, Bash, Bosh. Presumably a play on words on the word bishop at the end there. Bish, Bash, Bosh. And very similar to the rook mini game, the rampaging rook, the bishop has 2 ways to win. He could capture all of the black pawns, or if the black just had 1 pawn left, he could block it and stop it moving. Black wins by capturing the bishop, or by getting 1 pawn to the end of the board very safely. These are the same rules that we looked at in video lesson number 2 with the rook, just that we're using the bishop this time, that's all. Quick example. If you're white, white goes first of course in these games. The worst move you could possibly do is to go to A6. It looks logical. It looks like you're going to take the black pawn on the next move. And if black's careless, he will allow that. But if black's concentrating, well, let's see what might happen. Can you see what black could do? Black would win the game immediately by capturing the white bishop. So that would not be such a good move. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. Don't forget these tie in with our CSC worksheets, lesson number 3, and also the Kahoot quizzes. If you do all of these things, just imagine how good you'll be at chess by the time we get to lesson number 9. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again for lesson number 4, which is all about the queen.